Yeah, so if something happens to mine, maybe I'll come and
Yeah, sure.
get the backup copy. Anyways, there we go. So, to begin, I mean, how would you characterize the current state of the SPLM?
I would describe it as a major regression in the history of the SPLM. We've had several. I think we've had a major, let's say, call it a golden age of the SPLM, where things were okay. This was in the 1980s, from 1985 to 1991, when there was the major split in the SPLM, and then the SPLM, because of lack of internal cohesion, it went. There was a lot of infighting, and so there was a big. That was the first major regression of the SPLM. In 1994, there was a convention, a major convention, which was held, and it was the beginning of coming out of that regression, which culminated in 2002 with the return of Dr. Riek Machar to the movement and the ranks being consolidated. And that was another, you could call it another golden age, where from 2002 up to the signing of the CPA, the SPLM was very strong because it was united. And then after the death of Dr. John in 2005, another major regression started, which up to today we are kind of in that regression. And so you can say that the regressions in the SPLM have been characterized by lack of internal cohesion, so that every time that our ranks are divided, we are in a period of regression, and every time our ranks are consolidated, the sky is the limit in terms of what we can do. So I think that is how I can describe this time. It's another time of major regression, but this peace process kind of signifies the coming to an end. It's a marker for the end of this period, because we are coming together again.
Mm-hmm. Now, about this coming together, the Arusha process it's been longer than a year at this point. Is the party reunified? Is it actually back together as one?
I liken the situation to the struggle for the independence of South Sudan. So the people who are in power now are the ones that control the assets and the brand called the SPLM. And so it depends if, like how Dr. John used to talk about the unity of the North and the South, that if Khartoum makes unity attractive, then we might vote for unity. But if nobody will vote to be a second-class citizen in their own country. So you can apply the same logic to the unity of the SPLM. That if Salva Kiir's SPLM makes the unity of the SPLM attractive, then everybody would want to be in the SPLM. But nobody in the SPLM would accept, to be a second-class SPLM. And so I always say that it is not the policy of the SPLM-IO. And this is paraphrasing kind of what Dr. John used to say about South Sudan, that it is not the policy of the SPLM-IO for the SPLM to break for the breakup of the SPLM. But if a group of elders calling themselves the GM Council of Elders, which is from one community, decides that the SPLM shall be ruled through the GM Council of Elders, and there are 64 tribes in South Sudan, then it is that policy which will make the SPLM break up, because no other tribe will accept to be dominated by another tribe. You see, so the unity is very fragile right now. The situation of unity, and me personally, I think it would be healthy for South Sudan for the SPLM to break up into different parties. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, how widespread is that view of the SPLM breaking apart into different parties?
Well, if you consider that one tribe is trying to dominate the SPLM, then naturally the tribes which are non-Dinka, this sentiment will begin to take hold, and there are always people who are separatists and who have divisive ideas in every society, and so certain events sometimes give traction to those ideas. Like in Europe, there's the right wing, and now with the influx of refugees, it's not that all of a sudden there are like right wing people there. It's just that certain situations make certain ideas gain traction. So the politics of the Dinka elders has made maybe people who have anti-Dinka ideas, those ideas have started to gain traction, and so the other tribes are going to mobilize themselves, if the Dinka decide that we are going to impose ourselves on you, and so this is...
Now, why do you support that? I mean, not the policies, obviously, of the Gen Council of Elders, but why are you in favor of a breaking
up of the SPLM? Because what is the alternative? What is the logical conclusion of a Dinka-dominated SPLM? It is permanent war, and so why would we want permanent war? Diversity is healthy for any society. You get different views of how you look at life, and it enriches, it enriches development. So this is what the SPLM was founded on, like in terms of its vision and mission from the beginning, was based on diversity. So some people have come in with their own ideas and changed that, but in order to avoid conflict, I think that it is as a Dinka, I'm not for Dinka domination. So even economically, in terms of business and things like that, if you are a diverse society, then you can have a more diverse economy. I come from a pastoralist society, a pastoralist community, and everybody owns cattle. So I cannot sell what I produce to my neighbor, because my neighbor also has the same thing. So it's important to have people who don't have cattle, who don't have that culture, so that I can have a market. So diversity is always good.
Can you talk about some of these moves by Gen Council of Elders or by the SPLM and government perhaps, which are maybe pushing people towards dissolving of the party?
Well, I mean, they have made statements in the media, like it was we, the GM, who liberated this country, and we participated. We are the majority, and we participated. Like, our people died the most in the struggle, and therefore we have the right to rule this country forever. Nobody would accept, such a scenario, which is even untrue, because all the communities of South Sudan at one point or another during the history of the struggle for the independence of South Sudan have contributed in big numbers as well. While the Dinka were in the dark ages, you could say, like, they were sleeping, and in communalism. The people of Equatoria had already interacted with the modern, with the modern system, because colonialism came in through Equatoria, and so they were exposed to education and these kind of things earlier, and so they would have had an understanding of oppression and liberation before the Dinkas, and so the Azande kingdom fought against the Belgians and fought against the British incursions into South Sudan. They fought against the Mahdist revolution. The Fertit of Wau today are a small tribe because of their participation in the war to defend our territories. So at different points in time, the war that what came to be known as Anyanya started in Torit in 1955, and it was predominantly Equatorians. The whole Anyanya period was predominantly Equatorian. The Dinka contribution in such large numbers came in from 1983. So it is towards the end of the history of the struggle for an independent South Sudan. So during those days, the Dinkas were allied to the Mahdist revolution. And so some of the animosities that are between the Equatorians and the Dinka are from that historical experience where the Dinkas were in the armies of the Mahdi when the Mahdis attacked the Mahdist revolution attacked South Sudan, and the Equatorians are the ones that defended South Sudan from the Mahdist revolution. So if you put it into perspective, it is not true that it was the Dinkas that liberated South Sudan, but that rhetoric is used in order for them to take the lion's share in the dividing the national pie. And so another thing is the creation of the 28 states, which was not based on taking services to the people, but was based on annexing, lands from different communities to become lands of Dinka people based on resources that are in those areas. So this is very dangerous, divisive politics, and the Dinka elders have been on this, and no Dinka people ever sat in a convention and elected these people as their representatives. So it is actually a criminal what they are doing, because at the end of the day, it is innocent Dinka people who have nothing to do with what is being done in the government that end up suffering, end up getting killed on the roads. I was at the Ministry of Finance yesterday trying to solve the issue of accommodation here, and I found women, and I think from the accent that I heard, they're Dinka from Warab, which is the tribe the president is from, and they are begging on the streets outside the Ministry of Finance just for money to get water and this kind of things. So it is not a system that benefits Dinkas, and so it's an unfortunate situation, because the SPLM was never founded. The SPLM was founded in order to fight such a system where one community decides that it's going to impose itself on a diverse society. Arab privilege in the whole Sudan is now Dinka privilege in South Sudan.
There was also the convention. Hi, how are you? The convention, and then right after the convention, the registration of the SPLM party. I mean, what does that mean for the reunification process? Holding that convention without everybody there, and then registering the party again without everybody there.
It is. I don't know what to call it politically, but it's theft. They are trying to steal the brand. So they don't care so much about the content, as much as they care about the form. So the SPLM in South Sudanese politics today, and it has become a very popular brand that whoever controls that brand, is the one who wins politically. So they want to run away with the brand, but the philosophy and all that is not necessarily all there. So I think it is a miscalculation on their part, but it's just a way to try to control the brand of the SPLM and run away with it so that nobody else, because they made some unconstitutional laws where Dr. Lamakol was forced to remove the SPLM before his DC, because he's SPLM DC. He was forced to move SPLM because they created a law which says that nobody else can use the name SPLM, that they are the only ones who can use the name SPLM. You cannot use SPLM dash this or SPLM dash this. They will only be their SPLM, and they have put it in the law, and so
in their party law,
in the political parties act, yeah. So, and which if there was a rule of law in the country, you could be able to challenge it through the constitutional courts, because it's ridiculous, It's not, but it's just a way of trying to steal and control the brand of the SPLM, which will backfire on them, because at the end of the day, it is the philosophy and the objectives of a movement that sell a movement, and so because of all this, I envision that the SPLM might, the breakup of the SPLM will be permanent, in time to come.
Is it possible to succeed politically in South Sudan without that brand? And it's not just the flag and the name and the history attached to it, but it's also the infrastructure. I mean, offices in every state, offices in many towns. That whole infrastructure that goes behind it.
Yes, I do think it is possible.
You do?
Yes, I think it is possible, because the people are not stupid, People know that they are not getting roads, You know, people know that their cattle is dying from disease. People know that their children are dying from preventable diseases. These are like very real, tangible hardships that they are getting, and they also know the promises of the liberation struggle that the SPLM had made. You know, and so I talk to paramount chiefs, you know, and because if you're going to make such a change, such a fundamental change in the society, you cannot just declare that I have started a new political party. You would have to do like your homework at the grassroots level to assess the viability of such a move. And first of all, in 2010, I believe it was, the SPLM commissioned a study to be done by the members of the political bureau who went across South Sudan among the members of the SPLM, and it came back unanimous from all the areas, all the constituencies, that the SPLM has lost its vision and it's not doing what it was supposed to do.
In 2010.
Yeah. This was part of what led to the conflict, because the members of the political bureau were calling for reforms, were calling for change based on this study that the SPLM itself had done, and the report came back that the SPLM has lost its vision. You know, so the people at the grassroots level already know, you know, so that if another movement came, you know, because the SPLM has not been in the political life of the people of South Sudan forever. You know, it came from somewhere, and there was a political movement before the SPLM that must have been very popular before the existence of the SPLM. And so in the past, under Nimeri, there was the Sudan Socialist Union was a very big, powerful organization in the whole Sudan that was very popular in South Sudan. And SANU, Sudan African National Union, was also a very popular movement. The Anyanya also was a very popular political movement in South Sudan. But today, the SPLM which was a baby at the time that people thought were just thugs, you know, and the same way that they're thinking that the Arrow boys are thugs. What the Arrow boys are doing in Western Equatoria is similar to what happened in 1983 when the SPLM started. They were being labeled as bandits and we were going to hunt them down. But if a South Sudanese leader emerges among the Arrow boys, for example, and is able to transform that into a national democratic movement, it will knock out the SPLM, not because of anything, but because the SPLM has not delivered the promises of the liberation struggle. You know.
I'm really interested in that survey that was done.
Don't quote me on the 2010, but it was done just before, I think, independence or.
Okay, so it was around there.
Yeah.
Do you know how I can find out more information about that survey?
It should be. You should be able to Google it.
Oh, okay. So it'll be online.
Yeah, it will be online.
So, I mean, what do you think? You said earlier that there could be a permanent breakup if these actions continue. I mean, what would the effect of that be? Of a political breakup or a permanent breakup of the SPLM? What do you think that would? How do you think that would play out? I'm asking you to predict the future a little bit.
Yeah. You know, there's something that you mentioned earlier about the SPLM and the infrastructure and all this. It's not really that is the danger that keeps the SPLM strong. What keeps the SPLM strong is.
How are you?
Hi. What keeps the SPLM strong is the history. It's history where it's linked to the SPLA. You know, so that it becomes a political party that has teeth. You know, which can intimidate other political parties. So. How it will play out, or how it could play out, there are like several scenarios. Like we now have the SPLM in opposition, and we have the SPLM in the government, and the SPLM in opposition is starting to gain popularity, and anybody who would want to start a party that could successfully challenge the SPLM would have to get the support of people in the organized forces. So your message would be very important, and we have kind of returned to the December 2013 situation in South Sudan right now, and I see it coming through political tension. The build-up of political tension, and the government succeeded last time in portraying the conflict as an ethnic conflict. So the army split along ethnic lines, but that trick has already been seen by the people, and people are now coming out of that mentality. So if there was a smart enough or calculating enough or tactful enough leader that can be able to understand all these things within the politics of South Sudan, then political tension will build up between the various factions of the SPLM. And if you are able to sell your message properly, the political fault lines that will be created and divide the army. If there's a balance, in terms of forces on either side, then one side will be afraid to take out the other, and we might have a peaceful transition where the parties can compete. But if that process is mismanaged, then it can, if you declare yourself too early before gauging the temperature politically of the people, it can backfire on you. But if you do it properly enough, so several things could happen where the SPLM-IO, if it is smart enough in doing this, can live with the philosophy, and the SPLM in government will remain with the name, which would just be a shell, And so, if you're able to articulate the vision, and mission of the SPLM properly under a different form, then that would win. And I kind of see this happening, that if the SPLM continues on that trajectory, it will end up, dying, and a political force will be born out of this. Yeah, and it could be violent if people don't handle it properly.
I mean, how popular is that idea of the IO and its allies, forming its own group, leaving behind the SPLM's name, maintaining its vision? I mean, is that a widespread?
It's very, very popular, especially within the SPLM-IO. And if you were to hold a vote today in the SPLM-IO, those who want to change the name and go their own way are a majority and would win the vote. But it has been through the insistence of Dr. Riek Machar to keep the SPLM name and to try and save, because he is a part of the SPLM and he's part of the history of the SPLM, and so they created it, and like they struggled in it, they suffered. So nobody wants to see what they created, he wasn't the only creator. Like, he's part of the generation that created it. And so he naturally would not want to see it die, But so it is through Dr. Riek Machar's imposition of the idea of the SPLM remaining that the SPLM has been there this long. But from the beginning of the SPLM-IO, it has been very popular. People let us go our own way, But for tactical reasons, the timing of doing that also has to be calculated properly. But it is through Dr. Riek Machar's insistence. But the idea is very popular.
Does that create problems within the movements when you have many people in favor of one thing and the chairman saying another?
Well, it is. Right now, at the moment, it has not really brought a big problem, and I think there's so far there has been discipline enough where people have it has been sold as a tactical, a maneuver, more so than the real objective, because of the issue of how the brand of the SPLM, So if you declare yourself non-SPLM prematurely, it can backfire on you. So this is the way that I think Dr. Riek Machar has convinced some people to keep on with the name SPLM, but it's not popular. Yeah.
Are there groups within?
Ahlan Sahlan. Yeah.
I tried. Are there groups, like, does it break down in any certain way? Are there groups within the IO who are more in favor of a split than other groups? I mean, you, for example, you're of a younger generation. Is the younger generation more in favor or something like that?
Yeah, because there's a tradition in politics of South Sudan where once a political organization is created, those who created it stay in power until they die, and there's no new blood, there's no injection of new blood into that. And if you look at all the political parties that are there now, and you use that as your ruler, then the SPLM will also, these people who we see today as the leaders of the SPLM will be there until they're very old. And you look at the traditional political parties of South Sudan, that is the case, and so this naturally the younger people will be for something new. But there is different groupings in the IO, not only because of this, but because of the nature of how the struggle started in 2013. Different people from different civil society backgrounds joined had to flee the country. Members within the SPLM had to flee. There are people who were targeted based on ethnicity, had to flee, and their ethnicity does not make them one political affiliation. Like, there are people from different political affiliations, but they were one ethnicity and had to run because of being from that ethnicity. And so they all found themselves, in the bush and had to reorganize themselves. So the SPLM-IO is a coalition of different groups, like Gabriel Changson, who ended up leaving and with the generals who defected, were in the IO as part of a different group. The Gwelek forces, which are their objective was to defend the Cholo land, are our allies, but they are also a different political force. The Arrow Boys, who recently joined us, are also a different political force. So the SPLM-IO is the SPLM plus the other groups which are against the system, who are under a coalition called the SPLM in opposition. Mm-hmm. So it is a grouping of different interests.
I mean, it seems like a very difficult, like reading the situation, it seems like a really difficult spot that the IO finds itself in right now, because the government does have, the SPLM in government, I should say, does have control over, so much military and things like that. And one thing that you mentioned was that in any breakup, both sides would have to have the military to counterbalance the other. That strikes me as kind of as interesting, because one thing people talk about as being a problem is how politics are tied to military strength, and tied to a personality or a general who has guns behind him. And so it's interesting to see that possibly the way forward, though, in your analysis might be to actually continue that dynamic.
What do they say? They say TIA, this is Africa, and it's not unique to South Sudan. This is how it is in most of the third world, and especially Africa. If you don't have guns and you don't have money, politics is an impossibility. And so at the end of the day, it just becomes this is why the power of one is very powerful in African politics, because until an individual who has that heart, comes up and is able to use that in the most humane way, so it becomes very difficult to bring about change in African societies, but this is the reality, that in Africa you don't do politics. Like, if you can have good ideas, you can have wonderful ideas, but if you don't have the money and you don't have the guns, they'll just remain that as ideas. And that's unfortunate, but it's the reality.
Do you think that the IO has the money and the guns to make its own movement and go that way?
Well, I don't know about the money, because they don't share with me. I'm not privy to that kind of information, but I know that the guns are there. I also know that there are people with different interests, who will come in to support you, so those are all things that you mobilize, and I think that the IO has enough forces, because when we split from the government, the forces of the IO were organic to the government, and so we left with a lot of the things from the government. We've gotten some support from here and there, and I think that there's a general balance of weakness between us and the government, where that side will not really solve it will not break the balance for one side to be more powerful than the other. So we are now in a better position where we will be able to now compete for the politics of we'll be dealing with the politics of the matter, especially now that we have come to an agreement. For a rebel force to have an agreement, though it's a compromise, it's really it's to the advantage of the rebel movement, because we came from not having any sovereignty claim. Nobody would want to work with us internationally, to being heard on the negotiating table. It's a very big achievement, so I think that is our power, and we have achieved that. So it is the political side remaining, and I think that we have made even gains in capturing the imagination of some of the people who are in government as well, and we have a lot of support in the government. It's just that fear had been introduced into the society, and as we move forward with the implementation of the agreement, our forces are going to come. We have 1,500 on our side of the Joint Integrated Police. They are going to come, and so I am hopeful. I'm hopeful that through the politics we will be able to win over even those soldiers that are defending the corrupt system of the government.
I mean, how long so the reunification process is still ongoing. It's like you said, it's fragile, and there are big differences of opinion within the IO itself as to, whether it should happen at all. I mean, even if it were to go very smoothly, and Dr. Riek would return to Juba and the SPLM would be reunified, how long could that last? How long could that continue before people, within the IO who maybe don't support that, many of them, perhaps get frustrated?
It could happen. Another scenario that could happen is that the SPLM could reunify genuinely, and there is a split in the IO, and those who are for the SPLM will join a unified SPLM, and then the IO will go its own way and still form its own political entity. It's a very strong possibility, that could happen. So it should not happen through violence. It should just happen through understanding, and it's a very strong possibility. That the IO will split, and some of them will go to a unified SPLM, which is not in the context of how Salva Kiir is running it today, but a unified SPLM that goes back to its mission and its objectives, and pays back the people for the struggle. Then that SPLM could have a future, but it's very unlikely, for them to do that, because even during the struggle there were a lot of challenges. I can't predict the future, but
right.
But these are very strong possible scenarios. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, I think we've talked for almost 40 minutes.
Okay. Didn't feel like it.
So, well, that's good. I'm glad. So I'm going to turn this off now.
Okay.
Unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
That question always puts somebody on. There's always something that you can that you can add. But.
Or if I haven't, asked about some key thing that you think needs to be said.
I think it's healthy. Just that it's healthy. That the SPLM to break up is healthy. I don't know if I want to say this, but I'll say it anyway. That there's kind of a conspiracy to keep the SPLM united, and it is from the EPRDF, it is from the CCM and the AMC, and the fact that the SPLM has not delivered on the promises of the liberation struggle is not unique to the SPLM. The EPRDF, the CCM, the CCM less so, the ANC, and other liberation movements like the MPLA in Angola and Frelimo in Mozambique and the PAIGC in Guinea-Bissau have not delivered on the promises of the liberation struggle. And these movements being popular mass movements of those times, they fell into the trap of the one-party state in the 1960s, and so there was no social development. It was kind of stagnated by that model of the state. And so if the SPLM now which is the baby among the liberation movements, is the latest manifestation of that idea. If the SPLM looks at the history of these liberation struggles, it should learn from these struggles and say, okay, let us take power and not also form a one-party state. Let us dissolve the movement and say that it has achieved its objective, and let us put it in the museum, let us put it in the history books that this is the struggle that brought independence. But then now let us go to political pluralism in the society. Let us have multi-party democracy, and because the creation of cults of personalities, like in the situation of the NRM, where like there's this belief that there's nobody in the country except for Museveni who can. This stagnates the society and doesn't make people develop. And we have seen this example from the past. And so if the SPLM was to come and say, okay, we have done our work, let us dissolve the SPLM, because in the past other liberation movements have done what we are doing now and it has never worked. If the SPLM comes up as an example of this, it will make people in South Africa, it will make people in Ethiopia, it will make people in Tanzania begin to question. It will be a successful example, and then people will start to question. So nobody wants this example to be there, and so it is curious that it is the ANC, the CCM, and the EPRDF that are working hard, even though it is obvious that it is not working, for the SPLM to come back together and be a one-party state in South Sudan. Because we could lie to ourselves that we are going to have democracy, but if the SPLM is there and it controls the SPLA. I mean, I saw the other day on SSTV, Uncle Joseph Ukel, I think he's from UDF party, campaigning on behalf of the SPLM. The SPLM, and you're a different party, which means that the SPLM is funding, the political parties forum, and all the other political parties that are supposed to be the traditional opposition are in the pocket of the SPLM, which means that by name we have a multi-party democratic system, but in essence we actually have a one-party state, and so this is unacceptable. I think that's...
Well, that's a very big thing that I didn't ask about, so thank you. One last thing, I'm just going to turn this off. The accommodation, has it been sorted out?
Yeah. We went yesterday, we spent the whole day talking to the Minister of Finance, and the Minister of Defense also came in, and there was a thing happening where they are preventing our people from traveling. And then at the same time we're being kicked out of the hotel. Mm-hmm. And so I asked them, what is the objective? What is the intention of this? You say that because Dr. Riek Machar suggested that if this is the case, then those who have families in Juba, go and stay with your families. Those who have tickets to leave can leave, and the rest can go to the United Nations POC camp.
Really?
And then sleep there in the night, and then in the daytime come out to continue the committee work, and then at night go and sleep in the POC camp. But at the same time, when some of our people tried to leave, they were prevented from traveling, and we don't know why. So we asked...
How many people were prevented?
About 3. So the government some of the hardliners in the government were fearful that the 40-member team that went to Pagak was actually them exiting, and then some people were going to leave by bus and sneak out of Juba, and that we were going to attack Juba, and that we were going to go for war. This was the belief of some of them, which was not the case at all. This never crossed anybody's mind. Like, we actually we are satisfied with the agreement we negotiated, and we are confident that if these reforms we negotiated are implemented, then our objective would have been fulfilled. So it would be counterproductive to our objective for us to go back to war. We can achieve our objective through the implementation of the peace. But of course, there are always hardliners who don't, even on the IO side and on the government side, who might not see themselves in the new government. And so if you don't see yourself in the new government, then you claim that the peace has collapsed, and you try to work for the collapse of the peace. But this is not the situation. Our people are coming back today.
We'll come back to that.
Yes, and then the government has picked up the bill for the accommodation for 1 more month.
The government is paying.
Yes, because we were supposed to have formed our government of national unity today, actually. And so had the government been formed today, then together as a government of national unity, the accommodation would have become our collective responsibility.
Right.
So it is shameful for me as a South Sudanese leader for the Troika to be paying for our accommodation. It is not their peace, it is the peace of the people of South Sudan.
Where is the government getting money to pay for that?
From the government coffers. I don't know, like probably oil money, I think. I'm not very, but it's the government.
I wonder. Maybe the U.S. is giving them the money for that.
But the U.S. and they have refused to pay. The U.S. is very frustrated, and I got a breakdown of some of the money that they have spent, which is like I believe it's 35 billion since the peace. Is it 35? I have it written down somewhere. $1 billion.
It's a lot. Yeah. Whatever it is.
Yeah. So it's in the billions, and they even for the JMAC, for everything. Like they are paying and they are tired, and they are naturally tired of paying this money. So some of what they were saying is that you can always borrow money to fight the war. Why can't you borrow money for the peace process? And if they're right, it's not their responsibility. It's our responsibility as South Sudanese. So it's a good thing that those who want peace in the government fought hard against the hardliners so that this money could be approved, and it's a good thing.
Got it. Okay, well, it's good to hear that you guys aren't getting kicked out.
No, it is. I have a place to stay, but some of my colleagues don't. So
right, and then there's also the issue of security.
Definitely.
Is those 3 who were stopped? Because I heard from there was on Facebook the spokesperson for the Agua forces. Yagual said he was stopped.
Yeah.
And then I heard a rumor that there was a group of Equatorians who was stopped too, but
It was individuals. It was not Equatorians as a group.
Okay.
But it was an individual who happens to be from Equatoria.
Okay.
2 of them.
So it wasn't like there was a group?
No,
okay.
They were traveling for medical reasons.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was Yagual going to Pagak?
No, he was going to Nairobi.
Oh, he's going to Nairobi?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So no one going to Pagak was black?
No.
They were allowed to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Thank you again.
Okay.
I really appreciate it.